Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Wisdom Webinars, the 18th of July 2022, and this is my birthday Wisdom webinar. So this evening, I called this the power of silence because I've been seeing so much about the power of silence recently. What I already knew was how powerful silence is when we're listening to people, and we did obviously previous webinars and previous videos on listening, so I won't go too much about that. But when I was thinking about it earlier, I was thinking how, you know, when you leave a gap and someone's speaking to you and you just keep listening and you're silent and you don't interrupt, or you don't jump in with what you're thinking about, and you leave that space, they often keep talking. And partly that's because they are embarrassed by the silence, or they're uncomfortable with the silence. So if you leave a long enough space, people will fill it. But what I've noticed more and more is that people go deeper. So they don't just fill it with nothing, they go a little bit deeper into what they were talking about. So you get to uncover a little bit more of what they want to say and why they're saying what they want to say. So I was thinking about that as a really amazing way of being with someone, to allow that space and allow that silence. And then, of course, there's speaking, you know, running a webinar or speaking on stage or telling a story, and how powerful the gaps in between can be. I've had the experience of, I tend to speak from in the moment. So what I'm saying right now, I haven't rehearsed or I haven't written it down. I've thought about it, I've considered it during the day, but I haven't planned it. So when I'm presenting like this, I'll often speak slower naturally because I'm allowing the thoughts to come to me, and then I'll say them. So it happens to be, for me, a natural way. And I've really enjoyed being able to do that, because it means that I have space between, let's say, my insecurity or my nervousness about sharing and actually what might be useful or helpful to other people that comes out of my mouth. So the silence really helps. And these are sort of like the pragmatic ways that silence helps. So more to do with the usefulness of silence, really. And another instance was about 18 months ago. We started a channel called Mindset Runners, and it was all to do with my, you know, I'd started running and it was my running experience, and I was quite surprised that when I put a few things out on Instagram, people really found that inspirational. So they seem to find that more inspirational than, you know, all the hundreds of lives that I've saved. So I thought, well, it's really interesting, so maybe this could be of service to people. So we started the channel, and my son was helping me, and we got this channel going. And I did some 2 or 3 videos in advance to upload with some little running things that I'd done. And when we looked at those videos, I basically spent the whole time using the filler so as I'm thinking, I'm doing this, and it was really noticeable. And I hadn't even realized that I do that. So I proceeded then to train myself out of the umness. And one of the ways of doing that is to actually slow down your speaking so that you can keep up, if you like, with what's going on in your head, instead of frantically trying to search for the next thing. And when you slow down, you're like I am now, I'm able to not have to cling on to the ums. Of course, that's really helpful to people in terms of listening to you. So right now in this conversation, it probably wouldn't really matter and you wouldn't even notice it. But when someone's listening on a podcast or listening on YouTube later on and it's not live, that's when it can be a little bit irritating. And it also makes the person seem as though they don't really know what they're talking about because they're insecure. So that was helpful to see. And there was a lot of techniques of how to stop erming, including saying a rude word instead of doing an which I wasn't keen of in case I caught that habit as well. But one of them, which is what appealed to me, was slowing down. And then more recently, I've noticed that when I have more silence or space or quiet in my mind, I'm more present. So I'm not rattling away thinking about what's next, or, you know, on a deadline, or trying to be present, but really in the back of my mind something's bubbling away. And amazingly, I'm more productive. My level of performance is massive. I used to really worry that if I slowed down, or if I didn't go at 100 miles an hour and do all these things, that I wouldn't enjoy life as much, because I would be feeling like, what about all those things that I want to do? They're all these exciting things. I love learning and I love having different projects. And so I had this misunderstanding about how it works, because it seemed to me that to slow down would mean I'd have to cut stuff out. When actually, in effect, what I've noticed is that slowing down has made everything that I do more rocket fueled. Now, put a caveat in here, because the slowing down part came to me as an insight. And I really see that when we try to do something, because I've tried to slow down in the past, we can be sort of effective, you know, at times, and it can work a little bit, or it can work in some situations, or it can work for a certain amount of time, but it doesn't change you. It doesn't change the level of consciousness in which you're living. When something, whatever it is, when something comes to you through insights, through a shift in understanding the world, then it changes everything. So this is not a lesson on let's all be quiet and silent. It's more of a wanting to share with you what I'm seeing about that, because some of those words might trigger an insight or a shift within you, or a curiosity to look in this direction. And when I say that, what I mean is that I knew that silence is a very powerful space to be in, but I didn't know how to access it. Or the other one was that I knew that space in my mind would be really good for me and really helpful and really nurturing, but I didn't respect the space enough to, my words for me, I didn't respect the space enough to allow it. So in my free time, I would learn something new, or get on the phone and do a game, or scroll Insta reels or something like that. I really didn't, even though I knew the space and the silence would be an amazing, refreshing, nurturing thing for me, I somehow couldn't quite allow it. Now, not all the time, obviously. There were times when during running, I love to go and run with nothing, no headphones in or anything, just be with nature. I can sit outside and look at the trees. When I'm in group or with a client, I love the silence there, and I love that space. But mostly in my life, the rest of my life, I was like speeding along, Speedy Gonzales. And then this shift happened, and now I really see the power of it. And the funny thing is, it slowed everything down. I've become more sensitive to being speedy or overdoing. I've become more aware of, rather than before, I used to block it in my diary. Right, I need space, so I'll block it in my diary, or I'll do these certain things and then I'll have some time out. I've even used an app, which tells you to work for so long and then you can have a 5-minute rest and whatever. So I've tried all different things, but now I can just feel it. And in that space and in that silence, my life is richer, and everything is lifted. You heard that saying, all boats rise with the tide. All the boats have lifted. So where it might look like, for instance, the book that I'm publishing this year, and I haven't done a few things that I intended to do, I looked earlier at where that might happen, and I thought, I don't need to rush this. I don't need to suddenly rearrange things and block things out. I need to have more space. And in the space, I'll know what needs to be done next. I'll know what I need to do, and I'll know when to do it.